Hello and welcome to another episode of the Data Product Management in Action Pod. I'm your co-host, Nick Zervoudis, and today I'm speaking to Grace Halim. Grace was most recently a group product manager at Atlassian and has spent lots of time working as a product person, but also with data teams and data product. Grace, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Nick. I'm very excited to be here. So thank you.
I'm super excited for a conversation. So why don't we start off, just tell us a little bit about your career journey, your kind of origin story as a product manager. Did you stumble into it by accident? Was it all part of a careful plan? What did that look like for you?
Sure. I'm not sure that many people, when they're younger, they aspire to be a product manager. I certainly didn't. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I set out in uni wanting to study psychology, definitely. And then I thought I'd better throw in some business aspects to it just because I don't want to be unemployed at the end of my degree, just doing an arts degree. But to be honest, there's lots of demand for psychologists, right? But I just couldn't do the clinical side of things. And I found that throughout university, I actually really enjoyed the statistics side of things. So yeah, I've always been drawn to numbers. And in having said all that, my father was very insistent that I should do engineering because that was the next big thing. But I refused because 4 of my siblings had studied IT or software engineering, and I wanted to be different. But here I am. So yeah, I finished university and I actually got offered a role working in the psychometric assessment space. So validating the reliability and validity of psychometric assessments. If you've gone for a job at a big corporation back in the 2000s or 2010s, that would have been very popular back then. So that was something I did. That was paying very little, not even minimum wage, I think, at that point. But I was very proud because I got offered a job without having to apply for it because I'd done the internship. So since then, I've come quite a long way. I've done a lot of different things here and there. I've worked in margin lending during the global financial crisis. That was a trip. So yeah, when high net worth customers are borrowing money to buy shares upwards of $1 million and more, and the market was tanking every single day, that made for a very, let's say, fun to an extent time, but really it was a really big learning experience, I think. So from there, I had finished up at a big bank because I wanted to move back to Melbourne. I had an opportunity to work in Sydney. And at that point, I was at a crossroads of my life. An ex-colleague of mine offered me to work on something together. So we actually came up with a business idea together, not knowing how to do anything on the internet, really. So we had to YouTube everything, including how to make WordPress sites, how to come up with an e-commerce website, and it was a toothbrush subscription business. We had to do everything from scratch. But that was very good. After a while, about a year and a half, I realized, okay, I need to make some money now. So I was very desperate at that time, and I'd applied to 100 jobs, thinking I was really qualified for a lot of them, but there was an economic downturn. So then I took on a sales job that offered me to travel to South Africa for a training. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. And it was selling psychometric assessments. And they said, if you quit within 1 year, you'll need to return all the travel costs and all the training costs. I persisted, but then the company eventually made everyone in Australia redundant. So I was very glad that when I didn't have to do it anymore. From there, I decided to upskill in the analytics space. So I said that I really enjoy data and analytics. So I did a few Google Analytics free courses. And from there, I applied for a lot of analytics roles at big banks, insurance companies, health and everything. Many rejections later, I got my first product owner role at an insurance company in Australia. And originally, the hiring manager, I think, wasn't too keen on me from the analytics side because I had no experience. And then another hiring manager said, hey, you'd be a good product owner. Would you consider interviewing for this other role? And I said, what's a product owner? So yeah, I came from there. That was very fun, I think. I really took to the role. I really enjoyed it. I was given quite a lot of freedom. And at that point, it was managing websites for an insurance company. And the insurance company had 11 brands. So I got to manage the 5 smallest ones that no one wanted to touch. And so at that point, I got to make a really big impact on those websites in terms of conversion rates for, online application forms, etc. One of the insurance companies that I worked on was insurance over 50s. So one of the first things that I did was looking at the analytics. People actually couldn't read the website properly because the text font was so small back then. So that was the first thing I worked with my Scrum team on. I said, okay, let's make everything just extra big. And the experience scores and all the conversion rates went up. So from there, I was given many opportunities to join different teams to make some quick impacts. And I got to have some really fun roles, actually, where I got to work on some emerging tech products. So some things that people never came across. Some of it was working on a physical robot. So I got to learn the hardware side of things. And at that point, there was no large language models. So we got to buy, Watson as a product off the shelf. And then you had to tweak things and feed it large amounts of data. You had to train the conversations, etc. We've come a long way now, but this was 10 years ago now. That was very fun. And I've worked on many different products, different companies as product owners and product managers, and now people managers of product managers. And now I'm on a career break.
That's such a cool journey. Like you've kind of done such a varied mix, like from an entrepreneur in the physical product space to then sales and being the PM for websites and hardware and machine learning before machine learning was so cool. How useful do you think all those very unrelated experiences were for you? Because for me as a product manager that's also had to do a bunch of other stuff, often working for startups where there were a lot of roles that you had to fill as one person. Now I look back and I'm like, actually these things were useful, even if at the time, and if you look at my CV, you'd be like, well, obviously this is not relevant experience.
Yeah, it's funny you touch on that. I completely agree with you that I think all of our experiences definitely add value to our role and our value as a product manager. I used to actually have a chip on my shoulders when I first started out. I said, I don't have an engineering degree. These people aren't going to take me seriously. But as you say, Nick, I think having all these varied experiences actually lead you to a more well-rounded product manager in terms of your blind spots, as well as how you work with different people, as well as how to consider different aspects of your product. I think how to build empathy as well, because as you say, you've worked with different departments and different people. And as working in a startup, you just have to put on all those different hats, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, because I also have a non-technical background, I did politics at university, and I was like, okay, I need to also do a management master's so I can actually have some employable skills. And I don't know if I'd call it a chip on my shoulder, but I always empathize with the people that are not tech savvy and data savvy, even though I was always like super into tech, even though I didn't study that. And it really helps for figuring out what is a message that a non-technical user will understand versus, oh my God, why are you putting equations in a slide or talking about like complex data engineering concepts?
For sure. I completely agree. It's like when you're talking to the rest of the business, I suppose, you can actually break things down into intelligible ways, right? And vice versa. You can actually speak to the engineers and translate what it is that's important, right? From a user's perspective, rather than what's the next cool thing that they want to work on.
Oh, yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned, and it's funny because pretty much every person I meet that become a product manager talks about it, is impact. It's like, I don't know if it's just people that are especially interested in having an impact as opposed to working with cool tech or, I don't know, making lots of money or having forming lots of professional relationships. But impact seems to be the main motivator for people finding product and then sticking with it.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think to an extent, you could argue that you're not constantly customer facing, like in, if you're in a customer success manager role or something. But really, as a product manager, I make it a point to make contact with the customer and my team as well. So we've always said in a lot of the places that I work at, make sure you look at the data, not just the numbers, but also speak to the people, right? Because the numbers tell one story, but it's also the qualitative side of things. So in that regard, I love working with the research team or the design team and actually bringing those pieces of insight to the engineering team. The engineers love it as well because they get to see that impact. And it's funny that you say the word impact, because that is actually the flavor of the day for a lot of the big tech companies. So a lot of the performance metrics these days are always about impact. And you could argue that there's some pros and cons to that aspect, because there's always ways to gamify impact as well, I think. You could say, yeah, you can play around with numbers. It's like clever accounting. But I think if your heart's in the right place and you try and do the right thing, the impact will be there. And I think that when customers' satisfaction is up, or when sales convert and people continue sticking, that stickiness factor on your users, I think that should make you proud as a product manager.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, of course, in any big organization, it's kind of inevitable that you end up having some gamification of the metrics and people playing the system, but it's still a better target than output-based targets or more arbitrary metrics that don't tie back to the customer and to the business success. For me, the one thing I really dislike about an over-focus on impact is when the impact you've had was preventing a bad thing from happening. And so the kind of perverse incentive there is, actually, if I let the bad thing happen and then swoop in and save the day, people recognize that more. And I still don't have a solution to that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So it's like when you're talking about, for example, productivity, and you make sure that you want to do things like your engineering team wants to do as many, pull requests, and then they just end up releasing little things that might cause problems, so then they'll end up, fixing it with like multiple pull requests. Again, like I think if your heart's in the right place and you're not just doing things for the optics of things, that's what I always tell my team, right? At the end of the day, it's going to pay off, and it's going to help yourself, it's going to help the company, it's going to help the customer as well.
Totally agree. It's taking the long view on things. So I'm curious, you mentioned that 10 years ago, and I guess ever since, you've been working with a lot of data teams and also, I guess, software engineering teams, designers. I'm curious, what's your experience been in that, and how is it different? Like how does your average data team member vary compared to a software team member, either within the same business or across different ones that you've been at?
Yeah, I think some similarities. I've worked with data scientists before. I've been people guides to data engineers as well. And a lot of these people are really technical and really clever, right? So I think at the end of the day, they just want to do like really great things and, as you said, make impact. And I think they're motivated by, as you say, working on, I think to an extent, people like working on cool things, and they're motivated by the fact that at the end of the day, you can point to them and say, well done, like you did that. And that's the impact on the customer. I think in that regard, they appreciate that acknowledgement where you say, yep, you've done a good job here, or yep, this is some learning that we can do for next time. Let's try and do it differently. What do you think? And I think people really value when you ask them for their opinion as well. The other aspect is, I think people tend to respect you when you can understand what they're trying to say as well. So even if you don't have a technical background, you need to an extent, understand what it is that they're trying to do and be able to help prioritize things. Because at the end of the day, there's so many things that you want to do, and they're going to respect you more if you understand, okay, so this is what you're trying to do, and this is the other thing that I think we should be doing, and this is why. And it's easier to work with them when they understand.
I totally agree. And for me, part of it is because you need to kind of undo history a little bit. Like a lot of engineers have not the best experience with other PMs they've worked with in the past. It's the people in suits. They don't understand. All they do is they show up, they ask for new features, they ask why can't we do it faster, and they just don't get it.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate in the last organization that I worked at Atlassian. When I came in, I joined a platform team, and the engineers were so welcoming. I was getting ready, right? These people are going to say, we don't need a PM, we just need an architect to make all the decisions. When I came in, actually, the head of engineering, who was my counterpart, said, yeah, we need more product managers. We've seen what your team can do. You need to hire more, give me more of them, and everything that they were getting hit with by all the different areas, because platform teams, they tend to funnel into platform teams. They say, Grace, help us prioritize this list of 1,000 things that everyone wants us to do. And that was a really good partnership, actually. And I've worked at other places where I experienced what you said, where some engineers are saying, you don't know what you're talking about. And they don't know you're right. You've just come into the organization and you've just got this flavor in your mouth. And I've got these colleagues as well who've worked at different big tech companies as well. And they said, I've been burnt so much. And they tread the waters with really light feet because they're worried about getting their heads chopped off by the engineering heads, etc. But yeah, I think that's a plus, I think, when the engineering team welcomes you with open arms.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a partnership, right? You're not there to give orders. They know their job better. You know your part.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the same with data science teams as well, right? They just sometimes maybe they just need some confidence because they've never done it before. And that's one big difference, I think, where engineers, I think, tend to work with real conviction. I could be wrong in this. You feel free to disagree with me. They tend to be quite, I want to say, yeah, have quite conviction in what they're saying and what they're working on. Whereas data people tend to be more tentative because, they've been trained to ask more questions, make sure that we're gathering everything. So to an extent, you have to push them and say, okay, this is good enough. We got to go live, do that PM hat and say, okay, I'm not cracking the whip, but I am cracking the whip. This is good enough.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd never thought about that as a kind of dimension to kind of score people on. But as you were saying it, I was just thinking back to everyone I've worked with. It was like, yeah, actually, that's kind of true. And even just my software engineering friends have very, not black and white opinions, but they're more likely to just be like, this is wrong. Whereas data scientists, I guess because you deal much more with, I don't know, with probabilities and, a spectrum of it depends answers. It's not that they have more nuance, but like I say, maybe it's that lack of conviction, the fact that you know that there's uncertainty inherent in things. And I see it a lot. Like often I work with my data scientists and they'll kind of think it's a really big issue that, oh, we need to, take a guess here or give a probabilistic answer. And then you're like, well, everyone else in the business is making it up too. Do you think when finance reports a number, our average cost of acquiring a customer, that's an average of an average of an average, but everyone accepts it. Whereas data scientists will say, oh, but no, that's not right. There's a big difference in the distributions, whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the years-long training that's training them to think this way, right? Which I think is great. But to a point, I think you need to say, yeah, that's good enough. I've worked with data teams before where we're working on a predictor of engagement levels for recipients of messaging from a company, for example. And the marketing team have come up with some wording. So I came up with some wording in terms of what this score was going to do to sell to customers. The marketing team went wild and said, this is going to do all these great things. And the data team freaked out. They said, Grace, have you seen what they've written? I said, it's okay. I'll tell them to tone it down. But I think these things are actually factually true. These things probably could be a bit toned down and probably they don't need to go that far. But I think again, like it's like coming to the middle of the truth, right? To averages.
I feel like those three words, it's okay, or it is okay, are one of the most important little things that I do as a product manager. Like so much of it is just saying, I understand your concern, I agree with it, but actually you don't need to worry about it. Or maybe we need to worry about it, but not as much. It's like, oh,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you touch on a good point there. And that's exactly what it's like as a people leader as well. Because the product manager is looked upon as knowing all the answers, but really we don't. Like we just say, we're quite transparent. I would hope that we are. It's okay, we don't know, but to the best of our ability, we think this is the right path, right? It's that whole thing about hypothesis testing. This is what we think is true at the time. And then if an indication shows otherwise, then you course correct. And it's okay. Nothing is irreversible. Or if it is, then maybe take extra care. But most things in life are reversible. And that's the same with being a people leader to product managers, actually. So being a product manager, people look to you, but then as a people leader of a product manager, they look to you as well. That, oh, I said to this team this, but I'm not sure. And you, as a people leader, your role is to say, it's going to be okay. Yeah. What do you think? And it's about saying, I trust your judgment. And to be honest, like whatever you said is going to be okay. And if it's not, we can work on fixing it. And I think it's about, reassuring people, as you say.
I was going to say, I'm curious, have you done much of that helping people transition into product rather than just being the people manager of people that have been doing product management for a while?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned earlier, I've been a people leader to data people before, so data scientists or data engineers. I find the data scientists, they have more of an interest in becoming a PM rather than the data engineers or ML engineers, I find. So then I can help guide them and I can talk to them about the different pathways they can take. And I think the best way that you can become a product manager is to be given a chance in a PM role and then have someone to mentor you. There's so many courses out there, but I'm not sure. I think you just learn by doing, to be honest, because there's so many things that you can read about and you can do courses on. When it comes to real life experience, it's completely different, right? There's so many things that you should be doing, X, Y, Z, but really you could be paralyzed by frameworks and all these things. But at the end of the day, every situation is going to vary. You can use the framework as a tool to help you aid in decision making, etc. But it's not going to be the be all and end all. And I've also helped actually a Scrum Master at a previous company. He expressed interest in becoming a product manager, and at that time he was my Scrum Master for my product when I was a PM, and I was given the opportunity to become the product director. So I needed to backfill myself. So I said, actually, you've been doing some PM roles before I came in because that role was vacant for, I think, 6 months before they filled it finally. And then I got promoted, I think it was in 6 months. And so I said, would you like to have a go on a secondment basis? So I thought it was the right fit because he was already doing some things. And there were some rough edges that you could work on. But really, I think it's about giving people a chance that have shown interest as well as capability. Those are the two things, I think. And I think skills can be worked on, and it comes from experience as well as some close mentoring. So in that regard, I gave him the opportunity to work on it, and he's working as a product manager now at another big Australian company. And yeah, we still catch up for coffees, and he's like, come work with us. You finished up, at Atlassian, come work with me. It's a big compliment. And actually, the person who alerted me to your podcast was someone that I also used to manage, and he was in data and analytics as well, or actually more in data and AI side of things. And he's doing great things now as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I mean, for me, it's also a sign of a great manager that you know what they're doing. You're still like, you think of them when you talk about your experience. It wasn't just, little chess pieces in a game.
Not at all. Yeah, I absolutely don't work like that. I love working with everyone that I've worked with, and I actually learn a lot from the people that I manage as well. And I like to think that, they learned something from me, and it warms my heart when people will come to me and say, oh, I learned so much from you. I would like to work with you again. And they're doing great things at their next jobs. And they say, oh, this thing that you taught me, I'm actually using it now. And it really warms my heart.
That's awesome. For me, it's just a clear sign because not everyone feels that way. And unfortunately, the way the corporate ladder often works is, if you want to move up, you need to become a people manager, even if you're going to be miserable in that role, or you're going to be bad at it, maybe make other people miserable. I like how in tech we have started, especially for technical roles, doing that distinction between, okay, you can stay in IC, but be more senior. You can be a principal engineer and a distinguished engineer. But in product, it's still not happening as much or as often, even though still like someone who's a senior PM is quite senior, but they're an individual contributor.
Yeah, actually at the big tech companies, that is happening for the PM side of things. So there's distinguished PMs at Atlassian, for example. And we had a principal PM in my organization, who was a higher level than me. And people were saying, oh, that's the way to go. I should be that person. But I think you either want to be a people manager or you don't, I think. And as you say, I think the differentiator will be how much do you enjoy working with people, and how much do you enjoy being a therapist as well. So at the end of the day, I know I said, I don't enjoy the clinical psychology side of things, but really I actually enjoy listening to people and empathizing with people and, coaching people, helping them find not just solutions, but also what it is. Like how to make sense of certain things. And then at the end of the day, they've got the answers really. And then it's not up to you to tell them. But I really enjoy working with people. I know what you mean though about people leaders becoming leaders, because that's the only way to make more money, to climb up the ladder. If I had my time again or in my next role, I would choose a people manager role over a senior IC role.
That's awesome. I love how you kind of say you've almost gone full circle back in psychology, but it's so true. And for me, I started doing coaching calls recently, just helping people that are either new to data product management or they want to get into it. And when it's that second group, I always tell them the same thing as you. I'm like, look, find a way to get product experience. It's not going to happen just by doing a course or reading a book. And the thing that I had to learn how to not do is to give people solutions. Because as a PM, very often it's like, okay, let's diagnose the problem, come up with a solution, bam, like go and do it. But as a coach, you can't just be like, oh, I think you should take this job, not the other one. It's more about finding the right questions to ask and getting them to work out what is the answer that makes sense for them.
Yeah, that's awesome, by the way. I'm really happy to hear that you're, investing into the community, helping the next generation of PMs. I think it's so needed because a lot of people actually want to become a PM and they don't know where to start, right? So a lot of the time when I didn't have time, it was more like, no, I don't have time. Sorry, I can do one call with you and that's it. Because as you say, like a PM, any good PM, you can't say yes to everything. You just have to say no to certain things. And my plate was so full. But now that I'm on a career break, I'm actually considering doing a bit more coaching and, helping that next generation of PMs and just explain to them that you don't have to do a degree in engineering to become a PM. I'm a prime example and you are as well, right? So we can help you. And it's really about just determining what are the important skills and the important attributes that I look for as a people leader and product managers. And they're more likely than not the types of skills and attributes that other companies look for as well.
That's awesome. Well, you've got to keep us posted and let everyone know where they can find you if they want to hit you up. But I guess for now, you're more focused on the career part break or the break part of the career break.
Yeah, that's right. We actually just bought a caravan just before I jumped on this call today. So I'm very excited about that. But it's so overwhelming. I don't know if you've ever been in the market for a caravan before or if you've seen it. There's an overwhelming amount of choice and features and different. It's like buying a software product. So then I had said to my husband, we have to come up with a Moscow list here. What are some of our must-haves? Should house, could house, won't house, and then we'll just go from there. And we found our perfect caravan today.
Why do I feel like this is the kind of origin story of your new business, which is a platform to help you find the right caravan?
Yeah, sure. Good idea.
That's awesome, though. That sounds very fun. I mean, I love product work, but it's fun in a very different way to touring Australia and van.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to switching my brain off. And I've actually taken a couple of months off, but I still keep in contact with the people that I used to work with. And I find myself when I'm starting to talk to them, I'm like, wait, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, and is that still happening? X, Y, Z. It's been really enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to actually still keeping my brain active. So whether it be through reading books or coming up with a website or writing newsletters or whatever, I think that'll be...
That's awesome. It's good. It's good to have that balance. But...
Yeah, what would you do if you quit tomorrow?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this question. What would I do if I quit tomorrow? I think the first thing is I would just go on a beach, do nothing holiday, and really switch my brain off for like, I don't know, a couple of weeks. I don't think I need much more than that. I'll probably get bored soon after. But yeah, literally just go to the beach, have a book, read it until it gets too hot, then go for a swim, rinse and repeat for like 8 hours a day. And then after that, I don't know, it would be a mix of, I'd really want to get back into climbing, like go on some more courses and climb outdoors, because I've kind of let it slip a little bit for the last year. And then I don't know if this counts as if I'm cheating because it's work related, but on the side I've been working on a couple of things like a newsletter and coaching folks and working on a course, not for people that want to get into data product management, but more people that are in and aren't fully sure how to do some parts of the role. So assuming I didn't quit from that too, I'd spend more time on that because I really want to get it live before the end of the year.
Awesome. Maybe we should join forces. But
I heard it here first, Fold.
Yeah, Nick and Grace newsletter. But yeah, I just want to call out that it's classic PM. You just need 2 weeks off and then you're back into it.
Yeah. Can't live with it, can't live without it.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. For the last bit of this chat, I want to do a quick lightning round. So I'll just ask a few questions and fire off a quick answer. Don't overthink it. I guess first one, since we were talking about people potentially finding you, where can people find you? How can they best access your knowledge and wisdom?
The easiest would be on LinkedIn. So my name's Grace Halim. You can find me on the profile. I think I'm one of maybe 3 Grace Halims, but yeah, my headline says taking a sabbatical at the moment with a hugging face, I think, on it. And the next best is probably on Medium. I wrote a couple of articles, but I haven't been active on there. I hear Substack is a new spot for people writing newsletters now. But once I've come up with the website, I'll pop it on my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome. For the next one, it's a slightly more vague question, so bear with me. But what is a tool or technique that's really helped you in your career? And I don't care if it's a specific piece of software, just a concept. Just what's one thing you would really recommend to others to use?
I think just inquiring, so curiosity, I think is really important in product managers. So just trying to understand why things are the way they are and just asking questions. It's like that. I think it was in a book where it's ask why 5 times or something. But I think that's really handy because it's easy to jump to conclusions and assumptions, and I'm guilty of it, right? But at the end of the day, some things are the way they are because X, Y, Z, and then you can work on a better solution from there with your team, for example.
Big fan of that. For me, it's just essential if you're a product manager. I guess kind of related since you touched on it, but what's a book or I guess any other piece of content that you would recommend to folks working in the data product world?
Yeah, so this one's not really a professional book. I'm sure you'll get lots of recommendations from your other guests. This one is a bit more out of left field, but I've really enjoyed The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. So it talks about how social media is rewiring children's brains, how there's a rise in anxiety and depression in young adults now. And it's a really evidence-based book. So there's lots of research and studies behind it. And I read it really quickly once I finished work because I've got a toddler, obviously. But I just enjoy the approach of looking back on, what the effect of this experimentation of social media is. And it hadn't been studied at length before. And now we're just starting to see the impact. It's like a longitudinal study made up of many studies. Yeah,
that's very cool. Very cool. Obviously, in a really grim way. But still, it's on my list already. I've been meaning to read it.
Oh, great. Yeah, and it's about holding big techs accountable as well, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's the classic line from Jurassic Park, right? We spend too long focusing on whether we can and not if we should. I know I've butchered the quote there, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and it's so topical, right? Because with the rise of AI and Gen AI and stuff, it's just because you can, should you? For many different things that are happening now, right? Like, just using artists' work to train, image generated AI images, etc. Just because you can, should you? I don't know what the answer is.
And also the other half, like half of it is the ethical side, and the other half is, do you really need Gen AI to solve this problem? Or is it just that it could solve this problem, but probably in an expensive and maybe risky way because it might give out weird answers as well?
Exactly, yeah. That was the thing even 10 years ago. It's just because you can use, machine learning for this, should you? Because I worked on a project that was to help read meters, gas and electricity meters using, image recognition, which is all the rage back then. And it was actually okay out in the wild with 80% accuracy, but, nothing's better than human. That's what the belief was. But then actually I did a showcase in front of the company, and it was quite a big company, and I asked, who wants to have a go at reading this meter? And the head of IT, who'd been there for 10 years, is like, I'll do it. And I purposely put a tricky meter on there. It's like clock faces. It's really hard to read. And it's like, it's XYZ. I was like, actually, that's wrong. So I was a PO, and then he was the head of IT. And I said, oh, sorry, that's wrong in front of like 500 people in the room. Actually, it's this. So I said, what hope do customers have if even the head of IT gets it wrong, right? So to an extent, a machine can do some things. Most things, maybe not most things, some things. But yeah, to an extent, you need a professional still to verify things.
I really love that example, though. It's so powerful. And it's something I keep reminding myself, that it's one thing to tell something to your stakeholders, no matter how much research you've done, and another thing to actually show it or have them experience it. I'm sure that head of IT, if it hadn't been him picking an example and getting it wrong, would have left that room, even if you showed him lots of research, still thinking, I don't know, I think a human is better at doing it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Yeah, luckily I didn't get fired from that job. But in the weeks after that showcase, he kept chasing me down saying, Grace, give me another meter to read. I can do it this time. I said, no, that's not the whole point of this exercise. It wasn't to test you. It was to say how difficult it was for any customer, right?
So funny, but also so cool. I love that story.
Yeah. I still laugh. Yeah, I've spoken to him a couple of times since we both left the company. It was fun.
I guess, yeah, is there anything else? That's the end of the kind of lightning round questions I had, which I'm so bad at doing at lightning speed because I really want to touch on everything someone answers. But is there anything else, any like parting messages, or maybe should we go a little bit more into that project you just mentioned that you want to leave everyone with?
I don't have any parting words really, but I've just really enjoyed my time talking to you, Nick. It's, I think, such a privilege to be able to do podcasts cross continents now. We've been trying to make this podcast work, and you're in Europe, I'm in Australia, and the person producing the podcast is on the East Coast of the USA. Just finding a time between all of us has been so difficult, right? So I just find it relevant to how it is working in tech these days, I think, especially working in a big company. I know back when I was at Atlassian, it was quite challenging working with the East Coast of the US. They'd be working really late nights, like 8 p.m. That would be our 9 a.m. And then, for example, India was good for us in terms of time zones, but then Poland would come online at 6 p.m. And for me, since I've got a young daughter, it's really difficult. Like when she's around, she just wants to be with me. But yeah, I'm just, I wanted to highlight how difficult it's been, but I'm really glad to have come and made this happen. And thank you for organizing it.
No, thank you for coming, and thank you for being so flexible. I know you've got all these other responsibilities, and then me being like, do you want to come on a podcast? But I had a really fun time. And yeah, totally agree with what you just said about the time zone differences in tech. It's the one thing that makes me think maybe working from the office isn't so bad, or at least working from the same city. But I'm still much more in favor of working globally and remotely.
Yeah, working in the office, you'll just end up in a meeting room talking to people in Poland at PM Australia time, right? It just changes the scene. Yeah.
Just less comfortable.
Yeah, but yeah, look forward to keeping in touch, and thanks so much for having me on this episode.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Grace. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.